Hello, everyone. Welcome back to In the Yard Podcast with your host, Collin and Braeden Cox. And the last week of the NFL season is officially upon us. Braeden, I just want to start. I can't believe how fast this season went by. I feel like we were just doing
Flew
the
by.
season preview like a couple weeks ago. Um,
Yeah,
but
no.
we're here
Flew
in
by.
week 18. A lot of things have changed in the NFL. And obviously a lot of playoff implications and scenarios. So Braeden and I are going to get into that right here on In the Yard. Bray, your Packers. I guess I know you said you want to start with the AFC, but let's start with your Packers
Yeah,
winning
we can
in
do the
against the
NFC
Bears.
first.
Winning
Yeah.
in against the Bears, Jordan Love has been blown out, in my opinion. So what is your confidence level going into Week 18 against the Bears and Packers playoff chances and scenarios
Yeah.
here?
So right now, as I look, right, they're winning in, right? Um, they're playing the Chicago Bears at home. They blew them out week one, right? It feels like both teams are a little different now, right? The Bears are kind of surging. They've got the number one pick already.
Mm-hmm.
They could have went 17 and out and they still would have ended up with the number one pick, which is crazy. Um, but you have to be somewhat confident, but you also like need to brace for impact here because we are talking about a team that has kind of been all over the place this year, as high as beating a team like the Kansas City Chiefs or this past weekend beating the Minnesota Vikings
And the Lions too, a couple weeks ago
in
on
convincing
Thanksgiving.
fashion, and then falling apart against the Giants and the Raiders and teams
Yeah,
of that caliber, as well as the Broncos. So it's kind of all over the place. So you don't really know what
yeah,
Packers team is going to show up, and you don't
right.
know what Bears team is going to show up. So it could go either
Exactly.
way.
The big thing here is definitely two teams that have been very inconsistent throughout the year. Um, but Brad, I think the game's being played in Lambeau,
Lambo.
right?
Yeah,
So I think that gives the Packers the edge. They have a lot more to play for than the Bears.
absolutely.
But it's a rivalry division game, so the Bears are going to be playing. They're going to be out for
The
blood. Justin
Bears
Fields is
would
going to have a
love.
prove it game.
Yep.
Jordan Love's going to have a prove it game. I think it's going to be a good game overall, but I do think your Packers are going to come out with a win, and
Yeah,
make the playoffs there.
the Bears would love. This is their Super Bowl, right?
Right.
For all our Bears fans out there, this is your guys' Super Bowl. You would love nothing more
Shout out Mickey.
than to go ahead and beat the Green Bay Packers in Lambeau and potentially pick them out of the playoffs. You know what I mean? Me as a Packers fan, of course, like I'm gonna root for them, but realistically, I know that this team likely. I know it's all about like you just got to get to the dance, but it's like realistically, like if they were the 7th seed, they're gonna be playing a team like Dallas or Philly or you know what I mean? Like if they were the 7th seed, like I just wouldn't trust them in a game like that. So excited for them, but we'll see. We'll see.
Okay. So I guess we could stick to the NFC side of things.
Sure,
It's not as chaotic as the AFC side of things, I don't think.
sure.
I think we even said that at the beginning of the season, like the AFC was like a crapshoot and the NFC is a little
Yeah.
more balanced. But when it comes to the top teams. But so Brandon, give me some more NFC scenarios and big games in the NFC this week.
Yeah. So real quick. So the 49ers are the number one seed, regardless. Playoffs will run through Santa Clara. Dallas Cowboys, all they got to do is beat the Commanders in Landover, Maryland this weekend to clinch the NFC East division title over the Philadelphia Eagles, who have kind of fallen apart
Yeah,
as
that's
of late.
that's
Losers
that's
of the
shocking.
four of their last five. That's a big topic. I mean, they were probably you know, the strangest 10-1 team I'd ever seen
To me,
because they God,
I was gonna say to me, the Eagles were right underneath the 49ers,
yeah.
about midway through the season there. But
Well, we
yeah,
had to
you're
because
right.
they were
They've had a fall
undefeated.
off. Yeah,
Or they were next to undefeated, right?
right.
They were the number one seed, and they were, you know, they beat teams like Buffalo, they beat teams like Kansas City. So it was really tough to sit here and be like, this team can't go and win it. But they've definitely fallen off over the past, 5, 6 weeks or so. I mean, it's weird because, and we've talked about it before, they're kind of an ugly team, meaning they play a team like the Commanders the same way they play the 49ers, the Bills, where they play all these teams kind of close when they should really be beating up on the Giants, on the Commanders, on the Arizona Cardinals this weekend,
Right.
a huge blown opportunity. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
I'm not going to say that they're out of it yet for the NFC East because the last week of the NFL season is always weird because you got people resting and then teams love to play spoilers. I remember a couple of years ago, the Cowboys were in this exact same position where they were basically winning, they won the division. And then they ended up losing in Washington. And then the Eagles won, so the Eagles got the or something crazy like that. So I'm not gonna say they're out of it yet, but I won't say they're a contender right now with the way they're playing at the moment. I mean, anything can happen in the playoffs, but they're not a contender.
All right. That's fair. So basically we have the locks, the Niners, the Cowboys, the Eagles are in. Just not,
Probably a wild card team, but yeah,
yeah, wild card most likely. Um, and then the Lions. I don't think I
the
said them
Detroit
yet.
Lions. Yeah,
Your Packers if they win,
my Packers.
and then a team from the NFC South, right?
A
And then
team
that
from the
would
NFC,
be
and don't forget the LA Rams. Don't forget Matt
okay.
Stafford and Puka Nakua.
Okay, yeah,
Um, but yeah, that battle for the NFC South is a ugly one. I'll tell you that, to say the least. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers were in a position to basically lock that up. They hosted the New Orleans Saints this weekend, of course, division game, so it's going to be close. But they looked like the better team all year, and they crapped the bed. They did not look good at all. Baker played probably his worst game of the year, and the Saints once again, you know, showed, glimpses of like brilliance with Derek Carr, and they looked really, like a team that belonged in the playoffs. But they've been so inconsistent this year, and somehow, some way, the Atlanta Falcons are still at play. I think their schedule has just been pretty easy.
right,
Um, but it's weird because they got blown up by the Bears this weekend, but then the previous week they beat the Colts, who are in right now a playoff spot. So they're probably the definition of inconsistent this year. So I would say probably the Bucks got the best shot at it because the Bucks are winning in and they're playing Carolina this weekend, right? They
okay,
should win that game. They lost last week. They're gonna they're gonna want to bounce back, and I think they will. So I think they're gonna end up with it. But that doesn't take the Saints out of it. The Saints can get into a wild card spot if Green Bay loses, if Seattle loses. There's crazy scenarios all over the
okay.
place.
So are the Rams, are they a lock? Are
Yeah,
they definitely in?
yeah, they're locked. They're
Uh,
locked in as
the wild card.
either the 6 or 7, right? So I think if Green Bay win, so let's say hypothetically, right, the Green Bay Packers beat the Bears and the Green Bay gets that final spot, right? If the Rams lose to the 49ers, who are going to be resting people, then Green Bay would get the 6 and the Rams would get the
The
7
seven.
because they would
Gotcha.
have the same record. They would both
Right.
what? Um, they finished with the same record,
10 and
right?
7, 9 and 8, something like that.
Yeah, there's something like that because Green Bay's 8-8. The Rams
Yeah.
are 9-7. So if Green Bay wins and the Rams lose, they would have the same record, but Green Bay beat them in the head-to-head.
Gotcha.
So the Packers would have the 6 and the Rams would have the 7, which is what I'm hoping happens for the Green Bay Packers because that means, as it stands right now, the Green Bay Packers, if they got the 6 seed, would go to Detroit in the wild card round. And I
But
hear a lot of people online saying that the script writers are saying they want the Rams to go to Detroit because they want Stafford to go. You
Stafford.
know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
you know what I mean? They want that, which makes total sense. But for me personally, I'm a huge San Francisco 49ers fan this weekend because I want them to beat the Rams and I need the Packers to win. So they get the 6, right? And I could be totally wrong on that, but I'm like 99% sure that's the scenario. Because I would like our chances against Detroit versus Dallas.
Fair. Fair enough. Yeah. Division game definitely would be probably more in favor of the Packers there than a team like the Cowboys. So I think that about wraps it up for the
Yeah, we can go to
NFC
the
side of
AFC.
things. Let's go. Let's
We can
go
go
to
to
the
the
AFC. Still a crapshoot. I know we got some big implications. Let's save the Dolphins Bills for last, and we'll give our predictions
Yeah,
for that
Sunday Night
game.
Football. Absolutely.
So I guess we could start with what is it? It's Colts versus Texans, right?
Yeah, that's a win and in game. That's a
Winning in
whoever
game.
wins that game uh gets into the playoffs and might even have a shot at the division if Jacksonville were to fall to the Tennessee Titans, which, you know, Jacksonville beat the Panthers, but everyone's beating the Panthers this year, it seems. So, the Jaguars could be in trouble. The Titans could be playing spoilers. Who knows what's going to happen here? So,
Yeah, and then we also have, Steelers are still alive for a playoff spot. I think they need a win, a Jags loss, and a Bills loss. Is that correct?
yeah, let me pull it up here. So the Steelers' path is so the Steelers would get in if they win and the Bills lose,
Okay. So,
right?
and the Ravens are resting their starters, like you said. So,
So
and the Bills are going to Miami.
yeah,
It's gonna be tough. It's
and
gonna be interesting to see.
Pittsburgh would also get in if they won and the Jaguars lost.
Okay, so they get in with two scenarios, but the Jaguars play the Titans. You said
Yeah,
the Titans, so that's, I mean, division game. Anything can happen to that one as well.
yeah.
But it's gonna be
The Pittsburgh
interesting to see. I just
the
hope I
Steelers.
don't want to see the Steelers in. It'll
Well,
devastate me if the Ravens, Browns, and Steelers all make it
well,
in,
hold on
and
tight
the Bengals
because
are looking out.
there are three more scenarios that the Pittsburgh Steelers can get a wild card spot here, right?
Okay,
So, like I said, they win and Buffalo loses. They win and Jacksonville loses. They would get a playoff spot if they won and Houston and Indianapolis ended in a tie,
tie. Okay,
right?
which
So
is which
crazy
is like
scenarios
it, which is like a possibility.
because those two
Remember,
teams you don't know. Right now, I'll say here on in the yard, I'm picking the Houston Texans to win that game, even though it's on the road, because I trust them. As crazy as that sounds, I trust him in a bigger game. I trust CJ Stroud in a bigger game than I would trust Gardner Minshew, right? But the other path is if the Steelers were to lose, they can still get in,
with a
right?
Bills loss
They
and
would need no. So if the Steelers lose, they would need Jacksonville to also lose. They
okay,
would need Denver to win, and
against
they would
who?
need the Raiders.
Okay,
And they would also need Houston and Indianapolis to not end in a tie.
Houston and Indianapolis did not.
So they would need someone to win that game. And then they would need Jacksonville to lose and Denver to win or the
Okay,
Raiders to lose, that type thing. They
that's
could also get
interesting.
in that way. So there's a
Wow.
bunch of different ways that the Steelers can get in. I mean, their odds of getting in right now are 47% right now. If they win, it goes up to 67. If they lose, it goes down to 16%. So like they probably won't get in, right? But
Do you think do you think they have a good shot at beating the Ravens with the Ravens backups playing? Is the game in Baltimore or Pittsburgh?
Baltimore.
Okay, so that's, I feel like Steelers don't play very well on the road compared to their home games.
It's gonna be interesting because I don't know, man. It's like the
Hot
last week
take.
of the year.
Hot take. I think the Ravens beat them by 10 even without their starters.
That's fair. That's fair, and they probably should, right?
Yeah. I just
I
think the
would
Ravens have
not
more
pick.
depth.
I would not pick the Steelers to win this game, right? But it wouldn't surprise me
Yeah, no.
if they won 13-10.
Yeah, no. That's how I feel
You know
too.
what
I
I
think you
mean?
hit the nail on
It
the head
wouldn't it
there.
wouldn't surprise me if it was a last second late score by the Steelers that won them the game.
Well, it basically
But
comes down to who's the smarter coach,
yeah,
Harbaugh or Tomlin. And I just
yeah,
think, I know both of them are brilliant coaches, both pretty defensive minded. Harbaugh's a little more offense minded. I think the Ravens staff and their depth is going to put them over the edge against the Steelers.
yeah. No, I agree. But even despite that, like it's insane that there's still a path for them,
Yeah,
right? Like
no, yeah,
it would
definitely.
require the Jaguars losing, it would require Indy because basically the path there is like even if the Steelers lose and the Jaguars also lose, right? Then the winner of the Colts Texans game wins the division, and then the Jaguars miss the playoffs.
Wow, what a
Basically is what
fall
that, and
off!
then
What
the
a fall
Steel
off
the
for the
Steelers
Jags.
end up in that spot.
Wow.
Um, but we'll see. We'll see. I mean, it's gonna be tough for them. Um, it's gonna be wild, but I think that's a good segue into because we've talked about the South. We could talk about the AFC East with the Bills and Miami Dolphins
Yeah.
in Sunday night prime time for all the marbles where the Miami Dolphins are locked in, right? It's just a matter if they're going to be hosting a wild card game next week or if they're going to be probably going on the road to a team like Kansas City or something like that. So
So I saw a scenario where if the Dolphins do beat the Bills, they'll most
Yes.
likely, if the Steelers lose, I think the Bills would play the Dolphins again in Miami. Or if the Dolphins lose, they would play the Chiefs in Arrowhead. And I think I told you this already, but if I'm the Dolphins, would you almost rather play the Chiefs on the road with how they're playing right now? Um, the
Yeah,
Chiefs have
it's
that experience in playoffs, obviously two Super Bowls, Patty Mahomes. But the Bills have the Dolphins number, I feel like. And, it's
I agree.
just, a division game. I'm almost as a Dolphin fan torn, but I think I'd rather go to Arrowhead than play the Bills at
Yeah,
home.
it's really tough, right? Because like for one, it you can either look like a genius or an idiot in this type of scenario, right? Because as a competitive football team, you want to win the game, right? Meaning your host, you're probably the 2 seed, right? But there's also many other games at play, right? So really, we won't know the fate until like this game starts, right?
Right.
Because
Right.
this is the last game of the weekend,
Mm-hmm.
right? So we'll know, I would think we'll know two other teams, or what is it? One other team? Yeah, because the Browns are in. We'll know who that other team is, and we'll have a better idea of like 1 through 6, or you know what I mean, like, or 1 through 7, I guess you should say, and then where the Dolphins and the Bills would fit in, right? It's really going to depend, right? Because the Dolphins might be in a position where like the Pittsburgh Steelers are in the playoffs, right? And if the Pittsburgh Steelers are the 7 seed, you want to win that game because you want to
Right.
host Pittsburgh next week,
Yeah.
right? But again, that there's a lot of different factors at play where like if you win, you get Jacks or you get the Steelers. You lose, you go to Kansas City, and then the question becomes, okay, are you comfortable going to Kansas City in the wild card round? It could go either way, man, because do you want to go to Kansas City in January? You play in nice, warm Miami Gardens. It's tough, right? Because like you would probably like your chances in that game. But again, it's a team that plays in the cold and an experienced team,
Yeah.
right? They're a team that I think that if they ended up in the Super Bowl this year, none of us would be like shocked. We'd be like, we should have known.
The
You know what I
Chiefs, you
mean?
mean?
Yeah. It's one of those teams where you cannot count them out. I have a ton of people tell me the Chiefs are done, the dynasty's
No, you
over.
can't.
I'm
You
like,
can't count them
you
out.
cannot, you cannot count this team out, especially they're going to be playing a home game, right? I don't care who you are. Like, you preferably do not want to walk into Kansas City when they're comfortable at home with Andy Reid. You just don't. You know what I mean?
No.
It's a cold place. It's windy. There might be snow in the forecast. Like that's a disaster if you're Miami. Imagine you get a game that's like high of like 15 and you get like snow flurries. Disaster. Your only real benefit is like Tyreek played there. Like so he's kind of used to it. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? So if it's me, I would rather take my chances with a home game, right? Because another thing with the Bills is they're hot. They really don't look like everyone's up on the Bills right now. Like this is a preliminary Super Bowl team, right? And they might be, but like they look against New England. Like the only reason that they like kind of dominated them was because Bailey Zappi threw like 4 picks.
Yeah, I
You know what I
mean,
mean?
Bill Belichick division game. I think if you're the Bills, you'll take any win you could get out of there,
Sure.
in New England kind of thing. But yeah, I know what you're saying. Yeah, didn't
And
look
and then
great.
even the week before, they played the Chargers, that like Saturday night game against the Chargers, where like the Bills like in the second half like pulled away, but the Chargers were like competing with them with Easton Stick, right? And that's not a knock on Easton Stick. It's just kind of like, yeah, I mean, they're kind of like, I hate to say it, but they kind of remind me of Philadelphia in the AFC, right? Like as like they're like the Philadelphia the AFC because you never know what you're gonna get with them, right? They always seem to play sloppy. They don't have like too many dominant games. I mean, they dominated Miami in the year, they dominated Dallas, but like then they mess around with New England and the Chargers. It's weird. They're a
Right.
weird team that could definitely go and win the AFC, but it wouldn't surprise me at all if they were knocked out in the first round.
Yeah, it's good. way to put it. Those Bills are all over the place. So, Braden, give me your Bills Dolphins prediction. Who's going to win that game, and then give me your it's 7 teams now, right? Your 7 teams that
Yeah.
are going to make the playoffs in the AFC. Um, we have the locks already, but then give me who you think is going to sneak in after you predict Bills Dolphins.
I know I've been off on Miami all year, but I'm going to pick them in this game. I am going to pick the Miami Dolphins to win this game because it's at home and because of the way that the Bills have been playing. They play kind of shoddy. You know what I mean? They're kind of all over the place, like I just said. Um, it's going to be a close game. No blowout here. This is probably going to, I wouldn't be surprised if this ended up being pretty high scoring. Um, but I like Miami here at home, right? And I know I've been off on Miami, like I said, all year. But I think the Bills still end up in, right? I think the Bills get in because I don't realistically see. I mean, let me just pull up real quick, like the Bills scenarios, right? The Bills, what am I looking for here? Yeah, the Bills clinch a playoff berth if Pittsburgh loses, if Jacksonville loses. You know what I mean? Like I expect one of those to happen. I feel like I'm pretty confident that either the Steelers will lose or the Jaguars will lose. You know what I mean? So I think the Bills will be playing in January or like in the playoffs. This is January now. But I'm gonna pick Miami to win that game.
Yeah, I agree. I think Dolphins coming off a big loss last week against the Ravens. I just think the Dolphins have a lot to prove now. I think they're going to make some adjustments, maybe get a little healthier here. But the thing that scares me is, like I said before, the
Injuries.
Bills. No, I was going to say the Bills have the Dolphins number. Like if you look at the Bills' record against
True.
the Dolphins past like 4 or 5 years, they're
Bills win.
definitely have the winning record there. But yeah, the
Oh,
injuries also do scare me with the Dolphins. I know.
Bradley
Chubb
Chubb
went
went down.
down. Yeah, Bradley
Yeah.
Chubb went down. Is he activated for this weekend or is he out? Or does he have
No,
a status?
he's ACL's done.
Oh, it
Towards
was
ACL.
ACL. Okay.
Yeah.
So that scares me. Tua, kind of been inconsistent against these good
Big
defenses.
game.
Yeah.
How many big game? Like how many big games has Tua played in?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so there's question marks on both sides, right? Basically, what this comes down to for me is the Dolphins are at home, right? They've been good at home this year. There's injuries all over the place, right? But the Bills, Josh Allen's going to throw a pick or two. You just know, like it's
Yeah.
like inevitable at this point. And when you play a team like Miami that can just kind of score at like not at will, but like they're explosive offensively, I feel like they'll be able to take advantage of that more than a team like New England or the Chargers will. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's a good point. Yeah, the Bills' inconsistency. I mean, both teams
Plus,
have
they're
been
coming
pretty
off a loss.
inconsistent. Yeah, I just think I am also picking the Dolphins in this one, but like you said, I do think the Bills are still going to sneak in. So, Brain, so the Ravens, Chiefs, Browns, Dolphins are all locks at the moment. Give me your next three in for the AFC side of things.
Yeah, so I'm gonna have Baltimore 1, Miami 2, Chiefs 3. Uh, I'll pick the Jags 4, the Browns 5, and then the Bills will be in there. I don't know the exact seedings, but I think the Bills will be in there. The Jags will be in there, and then the Texans will be in there. I think
Okay,
the Steelers will miss.
that's what I thought.
Um, and the Colts and Texans is a win and in. The Colts are at home, so like they're favored, but it's like it's Minshew or CJ Stroud. I like CJ Stroud in that game. You know what I mean? Both teams are
Yeah.
kind of all over the place. The Colts might be more of a consistent team. Um, but the Texans have shown like flashes of greatness this year. So I'm gonna go with the Texans in whatever order it ends up being. Basically,
Mm-hmm.
I think the Jags will win the division because they're gonna beat Tennessee. And then the Texans will probably be like the seventh. So in that scenario, right? Um, again, I don't know the exact standings. There's a scenario where like maybe Miami gets like the Colts or the Texans. Like you take your chances there for sure.
Mm-hmm. Um, yeah, so my final three in, Braden, I just feel like luck is not going to go my way this weekend, and it's going to end up somehow. The Steelers are going to somehow end up sneaking into the playoffs. I just feel like
Okay.
it always happens with them. So I have them, and then if the Steelers sneak in somehow, like beat the Ravens, that means the Bills would have to win in Miami. And I already said don't think they're going to win in Miami, so that means they're knocked out. And so that last spot, if the Jags beat the Titans for the AFC South title, I think it's going to be the Texans against the Colts as well. So same last three, except for I have the Steelers instead of the Bills. Not because I want
Okay,
that to
so you have the
happen.
Bills missing the playoffs.
I do. I mean, kind of hot take. I just didn't want to have really the same numbers as you, but I just have a feeling somehow the Steelers are going to sneak into the playoffs here. Um, and then, but the Bills are going to be knocked out because I don't know. I just feel like Ravens resting their starters. I do think they can win by 10, but at the same time,
Yeah.
you never know with the Steelers.
It's going to be a
So
good
it's going to
game.
be ugly.
It's going to
It's
be a
going to be an ugly
mess, but
good
it's going to be
game.
a good game.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be a
So
mess. Both games on Saturday, both going to be good games because there's so many unknowns with both teams. I mean, with the Ravens, just because they're resting everyone, but
yeah, yeah. So we'll see. So yeah, I have the Steelers over the Bills, not because I want it, but just I just have a feeling it's going to go that way somehow. So
I don't have the exact like positioning because I don't know, with
yeah,
because some of them will have the same record. So who we get the tiebreaker, I don't necessarily know all that. But my three teams would be the Jags, Texans, and Bills in whatever order. I mean, Jags.
that's how I hope it goes. That's how it's most likely going to go.
That's who I think should be in too. I think,
Yeah,
I mean, that could be a separate conversation, but I don't think personally. I get that they're 9-7, but to me, like the Steelers shouldn't be in. You lost to New England, you lost to Arizona. It's kind of
yeah.
like Mason Rudolph. It's like to me, it's like a bye week for whoever gets them, right? Because the Steelers can go and beat anybody. I don't know how can you trust them like at all. Their offense is so shoddy. But we'll see.
We'll have to get Kresge and Logan,
Ooh,
former in the yard guest. If they somehow sneak into the playoffs,
that would be
um,
good.
Phillies fans and then also Steelers fans. So be could be a funny segment there.
Cool.
Cool. So I think about wraps it up.
Yeah.
Everything off your chest there.
Yeah. Yeah. And then in the NFC, just real quick, I'm going to pick Tampa Bay to beat Carolina. So they're going to get that NFC South. And then I'm going to pick my Packers to win that game. So then that
Nice.
wraps up the NFC pretty quick as far as the exact seedings,
Yeah.
whatever. But I'm going to pick those two teams to get in.
There you go. Braden's Packers. Go Pack Go will be into the playoffs. I know we did a segment a couple weeks ago where we predicted if the Bengals or Packers had a higher chance of making the playoffs. And then I think that was that after Joe Burrow went down?
I
No, it was
believe
after the
so.
Jacksonville game because Jake Browning kind of balled out, and then we are like, well, maybe the
Yeah.
Bengals
Yeah.
do have a chance. Also, just want to know off my chest, if Joe Burrow would have been healthy last week against the Chiefs, the Bengals won that game by 30 points, undisputedly.
That might be a hot take, but we'll see. We'll
I
see. I
mean,
mean,
dude,
the
Joe
the
Burrow
Chiefs
owns the
kicked a
Chiefs.
lot of field goals in that game. I'll tell you
Yeah,
that.
well, bet
You're
Joe
probably
Burrow
right
would
though.
have
You're
killed
probably
more than
right.
70 points.
Um, but I would argue back like they might still not be in the playoffs even if he's healthy because they look kind of a mess when he
Their
played. You know what I mean? They
defense,
they
their
probably
defense.
get in. They
I think they
probably
get
get
in.
in,
They would have beat the
but they're gonna
Steelers
be probably
at
the
least
6 or 7 seed. We potentially may have seen like a Cincinnati at Miami, which would have been really cool in the Zavala household. If Miami was the 2 and since he was the
But
7, but
you're
like
telling me that if you're a team, you want to play the Bengals first round with that experience and Joe Burrow.
absolutely not, especially
Exactly.
if Joe Burrow's at the helm.
Yeah. So
Um,
I know it would have been very tough for them to make the playoffs. I do think they would have beat the Steelers at least once. I don't think um they would
they'll
have
be back.
lost.
They'll they'll be
I hope
back.
so. Yeah,
They'll be back.
it
But who would
starts
have
with
thought? Who would have thought at the beginning of the year with Aaron Rodgers departing the Green Bay Packers that we'd be sitting here saying the Packers have a good shot to make the playoffs in the final week of the
I
season,
I
and the
said the
Cincinnati
Packers are
Bengals
always
are
good.
already eliminated.
I said the Packers always have a chance. They're like the Steelers. They're the Steelers of the
That
NFC.
they always stick around. They're never
They always
horrible.
have a shot. Like come week 17, they're always in the mix. So
Yeah. I
I'm
mean,
not taking
last
that
year,
away from
same
them.
thing happened. Same thing happened where they were winning in at home, the Lions. I mean,
That's what
happens.
that's what made me kind of lose my my like I don't know how to explain. Like that's when I kind of knew Aaron Rodgers wasn't the same Rodgers as he used to be. Losing that
Yeah,
game
that's
to the
fair.
Lions. Um,
That's fair.
but
But another point, as we wrap up here, in my original, I think we both had. Did you have the New York Jets missing
I
playoffs at the
did,
beginning of the year?
I did.
Okay, but for a different reason, not because Aaron Rodgers would have torn his ACL 3 snaps into the
No,
game, or
I
torn his
wasn't buying
Achilles, I should
into
say.
it. I wasn't buying into it.
I had him as the 6th seed. They, dude, that offense was such a mess this year. They probably do miss the playoffs even with Rodgers, right? I mean, they'd
Yeah.
probably be alive this week. They might be like a 7th seed though, because Bills are better, Miami's better, right? So they would be third at the best, fighting first spot. They'd probably be a first
Mm-hmm.
round exit, even if they did get in. So
All right.
yeah, we could
That's a
wrap
good
up
point.
there.
All right. Wrap up there. Hope everyone enjoys week 18. Ray and I will be tuning in, and we'll give you a playoff predictions preview. May have a special guest on that episode. We'll
Yeah, if
see.
things go right.
Things go right. Might have special guests on that one. I do know another special guest though, not Logan or Kresge. There's another one, mystery guest. Um, so that'll be fun. I think it'll be a surprise.
Confirmed. Confirmed.
He said he's like he asked me the other day. He goes, why haven't you let me on a pod yet? And I
Oh,
was like,
really? So we're
yeah,
not thinking of the same person. Okay,
yeah.
okay.
And
All right, fair.
I was like, and I guess you come on for a postseason NFL playoffs preview and prediction. So, all
Cool. Let's do it.
right.
I'm
Thanks
all
everyone for
in.
listening. In the yard now on Spotify. Also like, comment, subscribe to us on YouTube, and we'll see you next time.
Yep. See ya.